Hi. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about fire building. So before we get into actually building any fires, I'm going to talk about fire safety for just a little bit. So fires are dangerous inherently, and it is good to always make sure that we keep them contained and keep them from spreading. So you can do this by using a fire pit. That's the first way to keep a fire contained. So a fire pit can take the form of several rocks in a circle, or in the case of provincial parks, it's a steel sort of fire grate almost. You got a bit of a, looks like a drum sort of that's stuck into the ground on one side, it's flat on the other, and you'll see them at all the campsites, and you make your fire in there. So the use of this is that it ideally will stop the fire from spreading outside of this fire pit. Um, so obviously you also want to do your part though in making sure that there's no combustible materials around the fire pit. So that means don't keep your wood too close to the fire pit, and make sure there's no dry grass lying around, no dry leaves. That could easily take a spark that flies out of the fireplace. Um, the other thing is you also want to make sure that you don't have any gas or camp gas lying around the fireplace, because that stuff is extremely flammable and could easily lead to some pretty nasty fires. Um, Also, you want to make sure that there's no fire ban in place, because if there's a fire ban, then you're not allowed to make a fire, because the fire department or the municipality is deemed that it is too dry in order to make a fire, because if you were to make a fire, the risk of it spreading is very high. So, in terms of provincial park fire specifics, excuse me, you always want to make sure that you are purchasing your wood from the camp store. And there are several reasons for this. First off, they want to stop the spread of invasive species. So that's if you're bringing wood into the park. If you're bringing wood into the park, chances are you could bring in pine beetles or ash borers, all of which are nasty and will kill trees, um, which is not good for the environment. So you always want to make sure you're buying it in the park for that reason. But the other reason is that in a provincial park, it's a high traffic zone, lots of people going through. So if everybody were to pick up sticks off the ground, we wouldn't be left with very much in terms of actual forest floor, deadfall, which is a habitat to many creatures. So it's important to maintain diversity that way. Also, you don't want to break any living trees or break any branches off trees, because that also affects diversity. So first off, we're going to talk about the techniques that we can make fires with. So the different things that we can actually use to start a fire. So first off, we're going to start with my favorite technique, which is matches. So right here we have a pack of Redbird matches. They are a very effective fire starter. They're strike anywhere. You can strike them off a rock. So best is to strike them off the strike pad though. Nice part about matches is that they hold a flame for a fairly long time, and you could drop them down into the fire, which means that if it's hard to reach the tinder, we're going to talk about that later, the stuff that actually really starts the fire, the easy stuff to light, so paper, whatnot. If it's hard to reach that, you can drop this right down, and then you can get it. So these are nice, but if they get wet, they don't really work very well. Another option for starting fires is a lighter. So here we have a lighter. Now the nice thing about a lighter is that you can maintain a flame for quite a while with it, right? So I can hold the button down and I can keep a flame going for quite a while. So the nice part about this is I could go around the fire and I could light it on all sides, and that would help get a nice even burn when we start. So one of the disadvantages to this lighter though is if it's cold, they're a little hard to use because the gas doesn't come out as fast. Also, they tend to, if you get them hot enough, things can go wrong with them. They can actually explode. So you don't want to get them very hot in a fire. So there's that. And the final method I'm going to talk about is a flint and steel. So I have a flint and steel right here. This is sort of the most primitive method that I'm going to discuss. We have basically, here I'll show you it. It'll throw sparks. So the way that this works is you can spark very dry, fluffy material, basically, is what this stuff really likes. And the nice thing about these, though, is that they will work when they're wet, but it's hard to light things when they're wet. So you could drop this in the water; it'll still make sparks pretty nicely. Okay. So now the next part, we are going to be talking about the different fuel types that you can use in fires. So the first fuel type, and the most important for really getting the fire started, is something that I like to call tinder, or well, that is called tinder. So here we have a couple different forms of tinder. What we are looking at here, this is the bark from a cedar tree, right there. And if you can see, when you squish it up, you sort of roll it around in your hand, you can get this very dry sort of fuzzy stuff. And this takes a spark quite nicely and will hold it. Hold an ember, which will let you light the rest of the fire from that. So the tinder in natural tinder can come in many forms. So birch bark is a great natural tinder. Lots of oils, burns very well. As I said, the cedar bark from the inner bark of a cedar tree that's all smushed up is very good for catching a spark too. So, and also cattail fluff. That's very good, especially with the flint and steel. The cattail fluff takes a spark very nicely, and will start to burn. In terms of man-made tinders, lint is a very good one. So we have that right here. This is a piece of dryer lint, and this will take a spark very nicely as well. Paper, that one needs not really a spark, but more of a direct flame. So a match or a lighter will do fine. So a piece of newspaper, just like that. And also fire starters, actual. You can buy them at the camp store. They have usually a lot of oils in them, and they burn very well. So those give a nice hot flame that'll really get wood going. So I'll put the tinder away. The next part of fire making is something called kindling. So kindling is the next piece that you require in starting a fire. So I've got a pile of it right here. Grab it. Oh, okay. So see this kind of stuff? So basically, this kind of stuff is it's under the width of my finger usually. So that's kind of a rule. If it's under the width of your finger, it's probably kindling. So kindling is just dry sort of brindle. And that is what your tinder should hopefully light up. So this stuff, as you can see, is very dry, and it's very fine too. So the paper or the lint, while it's burning, can easily catch this stuff on fire, and then this stuff can catch the bigger stuff on fire, which is our fuel, our main fuel. So that can take the form of logs or larger sticks, larger than your finger, obviously. So here is an example. It's bigger than my finger. Here we got another one. Look at that, large sticks, all right? So this is what's going to actually keep your fire burning for a long time, and it's going to keep it nice and warm. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go through different types of fire formations. So there are three main types I want to talk about, and we're going to start with one called the log cabin. So the way the log cabin is made, I hope the camera can see this. Give me a sec. All right, here we go. So I'm going to actually make a log cabin. So we're going to put two down like that. We're going to put one on top. Here. And as you can see, it's taking the shape of something that looks like a log cabin, right? The way that the sticks are laid on top of each other. So here we go. This is a pretty good looking log cabin. So the way that you're going to make this log cabin properly, so now they tend to come in a little bit, so you want them to get smaller and smaller the way you overlay them, so that the flames that come up, basically what you want to do in the middle, you want to put your tinder right down at the bottom. So if I get some of this stuff, I'll put it down right there, and then I'll take some of this brindle, the kindling, and I'll break that up, and I'll put that in the middle too, and that'll all light, and then the larger logs on the outside, or the fuel, that's going to be what actually keeps the fire going, right? So, but this stuff is what you need to start it. Kindling. Advantages of this type of fire is that it keeps it fairly low, and it keeps it hot, because all the embers are right in the middle usually. What's difficult, and also good airflow through this, because as you can see there's lots of holes. But one of the issues with this kind is that it's very hard to start. So if you just have a little bit of brindle sort of in the middle, it's the chances of it actually lighting are not great. So and if it's windy, it's pretty difficult to get going. So the next technique we're going to talk about is called the teepee. So I'm going to take this guy apart. The way the teepee works is, as the name suggests also, it is a teepee. Just like the log cabin is a log cabin. So you want to skewer some sticks into the ground like that. We can do like that, and like that. There we go. Might want to make the base a little wider on this thing. Alright, so this is the start of a teepee formation. So what you want to do with a teepee then is lean all of your other sticks up against this frame that you already have. And again, you're going to take your tinder, this is lint, we're going to throw that in the middle. We're going to totally surround this teepee with sticks. So just like that, just lots of sticks, as many as you want. And then what we're going to do is we can, first off, we can break up some of this kindling and we can put it in the middle. So if I were to do that, I'll throw some of this down there. Whoopsies, it fell over. Oh no. I'll try to keep it up. So we'll be putting some of that in the middle, and then what we can do, it's best to put that in first. Then we can totally surround it with more kindling if we want on the outside, along with our large logs, which will eventually catch when it comes up. So what happens is when we light this from the bottom, we are going to get a fair amount of flame right from the beginning, which is nice if you want to start a fire quickly. So basically, what's good about this fire is so big flame and it's very quick to start. So it's going to come up nice and fast, and it also has very good airflow. The problem with this one is that it keeps the fire fairly high above the ground, so it wants to burn up very quickly, which means that there's not very much heat down in the bottom, so it wouldn't be very good for cooking later. And it collapses fairly quickly. As you could see, I mean, it fell over fairly easily. If I push this, boom, it all falls down. So as soon as it starts burning, it falls down to the ground, and then you don't have as much airflow anymore. So my favorite method is a sort of cross between both of these two. I like to call it the teepee log cabin hybrid, I guess. So here is what that is. So what I would do is I would build the log cabin just like I did before. So here we go. We got a little log cabin going. Oh. Okay, so that's awesome. Now we have sort of a log cabin base. This is pretty small at the moment. I could make it a bit bigger. Maybe I'll just plop these two on top. Why not? So that's our log cabin base. But then what we're going to do is inside it, we're going to place our tinder down, right? Down in the middle. And we're going to break up some sticks. I'll find some that I've already busted up. Break them up. We're going to plop those down in the middle. Kind of like that. So now we have lots of stuff in the middle. That's good for lighting initially. And then what we're going to do is on top of that, we are going to build a teepee. So I'll skewer that into the ground. And I will skewer this in on this side. Alright. So it's like that. And we can get some more branches like this. Skewer them in too. Okay, see, so now we have a sort of log cabin teepee cross. And what we can do is we can break up some more tinder, or more, sorry, kindling. And we can put that inside here. We can put that around, just like that. And now we're ready to go. So what this is going to do, this is going to, and I'm going to, if I were doing it, I'd put more sort of kindling and more logs up here, or more of the actual fuel logs in the teepee. We're going to light this down at the bottom so we can reach through the log cabin, light the lint right at the bottom. That should catch some of these branches above it. And it's going to come right up. So we'll get a nice initial flame. It'll start nice and quick. And when this collapses, the log cabin will already be on fire. And that log cabin will keep burning, which is what we want. And it'll keep a nice flame and a nice fire going for longer. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. You want to make sure all your wood's always dry. I don't think I mentioned that, but the drier the wood, the better. Yeah, so that's fire building 101. Awesome. Ugh. I gotta find the stop button. There we go.